Hey everybody, welcome to Regulatory Joe. I'm Joe Boyle, president of ClearFile, and on today's episode we'll be discussing the shift to state-based exchanges and why that's picking up speed. So before we get into the shift, we'll just do a quick recap on some terminology. What is a federally facilitated exchange? An FFE is where an issuer traditionally files through CMS, utilizes and relies on them for enrollment and marketplace functions. When we talk about a full state-based marketplace, that's where a state exchange manages all operations within the marketplace, including enrollment and billing, on behalf of that issuer. A state-based exchange operating on a federal platform, otherwise known as an SBE-FP, is a traditional one-year transitionary period that allows state-based exchanges to become prepared with readiness, staffing, operations, to then be able to handle the volumes of enrollment, the volumes of billing, the volumes of functions that members will create during the influx of enrollment after an issuer has completed the filing process. So if you put the ACA on a timeline from the inception of QHPs, there was really 14 states that embraced the ability to either transition by way of a state-based marketplace or state-based exchange, or become a full state-based exchange. When we fast forward the clock to today in current time, those statistics have grown immensely. And when we fast forward the clock to today, for the most recent states looking to convert to become a state-based exchange for plan year 2027, Oregon is bringing the total industry pool up to about 43% of all jurisdictions implementing this as a core principle for future plan years. If we walk back a recent pace of transition history, we can look at a few states that have also followed this trajectory over the past couple plan years. Virginia moved to become a state-based exchange during plan year 2024. Georgia for plan year 2025. Illinois for plan year 2026. Like we mentioned, Oregon for plan year 2027. That really sets the tone for an even faster pace as we enter and start planning strategically into plan year 29, 30, and so on. And when we even walk back a timeline for states such as Oklahoma entering this SBE-FP process in plan year 2026, now looking for a full conversion to a state-based exchange in plan year 2028. And when we look at some of the pros and positives for becoming a state-based exchange, there's really quite a few. Not just boosting the economy for that given geography within that zip code or county by creating jobs for folks that will be managing enrollment, billing operations, working with issuers, but inherently against the headwinds of the ACA, and we saw this clear as day with the NBPP, that becoming a state-based exchange allows much more control over standardized day-to-day operations within the QHP ecosystem for the members within that state. So each state has a voice, they have a different member pool with different demographics and all sorts of different health conditions. Of course, we all have to follow CMS's federal baseline policies like we talked about, those EHBs, those essential health benefits that everybody must adhere to across the country. But states can then look to enhance those benefits for members, for example, against the elimination of subsidy eligibility. States, as a state-based exchange, could utilize the additional control they have to create other financial opportunities for their members, whether it's by way of cost share reconciliation, whether it's by way of alternate funding methods, or even alternate product type mandates with issuers in that state. So really understanding the capabilities that a state-based exchange will allow you, we recognize and fully understand it's a process. It takes a long time. Early adopters have definitely utilized and carried value from this process. States such as Massachusetts were pioneers even as early as Romneycare, leading the state-based exchange industry and setting those parameters through their RFI process. We do see states taking different shapes and forms of how they manage their business, not always straightforward for all issuers of different sizes. We understand larger issuers are more easily accommodating to those business processes because they have the resources available. We encourage regional issuers, provider issuers, or even startup issuers to proactively reach out, work with your SBEs, and understand their needs so you can meet them where they're at. So when we talk about what this means for issuers, we have 4 things that you need to know. Working with an SBE really means that your filing pathway will ultimately change. So we do know that the FFE has been operating on a singular submission timeline since the inception of the ACA. Converting to an SBE no longer cedes to the timeline that CMS has provided. State-based exchanges will develop and will implement their own deadlines that wrap around FFE deadlines. So if you operate in multiple states, and if you're following this process for states during the conversion process, You need to have multiple implementation plans, multiple project plans. When we talk about the pathway, that leads right into systems and requirements. What we see here at ClearFile from an SBE lens is SBEs take a byproduct of those codified technical materials and create their own state-based materials and requirements. And as states create these state-specific requirements, justification forms, they attempt to simplify these complex federal templates. We know the plan and benefit template is one of the most complex, labor-intensive templates, but we know why it drives, why it's so important for CMS's codification. So when you take a template that has thousands of data points, we see some states create their own version of a light plan and benefit template that may have a third of the components, a fourth of the components, or a fifth of the components issuers must complete to create more streamlined review. So we're also seeing states take CMS's lengthy review process and simplifying it. That's created their own efficiencies during the approval process. When we talk about the third item, when we talk about handoffs and communication and working with states, we do find that SBEs are much more fluid with communication, as we can have an open line and retain that open line throughout the filing process, pre-submission, review period, and ultimate certification. When we work with CMS, we're really beholden to the ticketing process. So we work with the CMS FEPS help desk, which again, that process has improved over time, but still yields long delay times, unresolved questions, unresolved issues for undetermined periods of time. The benefit for working with state-based exchanges is generally you have more line of sight to direct individuals where you can pick up the phone or arrange calls with your reviewers and with the exchange to answer questions quickly and timely. And one net new improvement that this would actually be favorable, and this is a call out for any net new issuers looking to enter new marketplaces, if you'd like an easier time starting off your first year, I'd recommend entering an SBE. You'll have, generally speaking, a more easier time during the network development, contracting, and review process. We know it's really hard to contract networks, especially in states with rural counties. So as states convert to state-based exchanges, encourage issuers, especially new market entrants, to have a more hyper-focused view of where you'd want to participate in these markets and work with your exchange to understand how a compliant network will be contracted. We know some state-based exchanges have their own adequacy review process that could supersede CMS's network adequacy requirements. So as we're developing these validation tools and functions on a traditional FFE, we're seeing new market entrants fail network validations where that same network could be approved in the SBE market, allowing healthy competition and economies of scale for those members with those issuers. So regardless if you're a new issuer just starting out or a veteran issuer to the industry, some closing remarks is just we really want issuers to start mapping and tracking and really building that relationship with your states that you either know are converting to SBEs right now or that you think are anticipating converting to become an SBE. Won't be even too far-fetched to say, as an issuer in the marketplace, even advocating for your states to start thinking about the conversion process could be a worthwhile conversation. So thank you everybody for listening in. Give us a like, give us a share, and we'll see you all next time.